My name is Angela Elliott Frazier. Obviously, I started out as an Elliott. That's my maiden name. I still am an Elliott. But my husband's last name is Frazier. He's from Greenville, Russell. And I grew up in North Myrtle Beach. I have two brothers, Rick and David, and my mom, Ann, and my dad. And I went to North Myrtle Beach High School, and I went to Columbia College for school. I studied dance, and I studied English, and then I went to Washington and worked there with Fritz Hollings for a few years. And then after working with Fritz on the Hill, with Senator Hollings on the Hill for, I guess it was about a year and a half, I came back and I started law school at USC and met my husband, and then ultimately ended up moving to Greenville to be closer to him. But my family's still down in North Myrtle Beach. Smart. Very intelligent, good with numbers, good with business, good with understanding, complex business transactions. But more importantly, and most importantly, I would just say he's a person of character, of good ethics. I think he was able to garner respect from sort of both sides of the aisle. I think he was able to sort of be a person who could bring others together when there was, a lot of conflict or a lot of distance between opposing sides or opposing parties or opposing people. And I think part of what he was able to do was to bring people together to compromise, which not many people have that ability to sort of see the bigger picture and, do what's best in that situation. So I think he was successful because he was willing to work together with others. When I was a kid, it was close to Christmas, and a car drove in the driveway. My dad and I were out in the driveway, and the family, it was a dad and the kids and mom, and they were all in the car. And I remember hearing, I was a little bit annoyed at first because, it was sort of close to Christmas, and I looked forward to spending time with my dad and wanted to hang out with my dad. He's my dad. Every kid wants to hang out with their dad, right? And I remember being a little bit annoyed because this car had come up, and it was somebody who was talking to him. But I heard the conversation, or part of it, where the man was saying that his house had caught up in a fire, and it was right before Christmas, and all the Christmas gifts for the kids had been destroyed. And I just remember my dad turning away so that the family in the car couldn't see after he finished talking to the guy, and he gave him some money, and he said, make sure that your family has a good Christmas. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's really cool. And it just made such a huge impact to me to know. And he never said anything about it to me. He never said anything about it to my mom or anybody else. It was just quietly humble and a sincere gesture of kindness to someone else without any desire for any recognition. And that's one of the things I can say about him. Being around a political family your whole life, you see a lot of politicians and people who run to, the news station or issue a press release every time they do something. And, my dad's way was quieter. It was, if people recognized him, he was always grateful, but he never ran looking for any kind of accolades or appreciation or whatever for someone else. I think he just served, but with a humble spirit. Lots of times he would do for others, or he would help out other families or other people, but you didn't hear about it until years later, and they say, your dad really helped me out this one time, and he got, he did this for our family, or he did this for the community, things that I never knew he had even done. Certainly things that never made the newspapers or the press. So it was always kind of nice to know that, he was not interested in, he wasn't interested in having other people tell him, you did a good job. He was just interested in doing a good job. Well, my brothers are older, and so I was sort of almost like an only child because my brothers are almost out of high school by the time I came along. And some of my fondest memories, my dad has this big, huge reclining chair that sits over beside the sliding glass door in our den, and he would sit me right beside him in that chair. And when I was little, and he was smaller as well. I could actually fit right beside him and sit in the chair, and we would sit up at night and we would watch TV, or he would read the paper and I would try to read the paper with him or pretend to read the paper. And I just remember those moments just sitting in my dad's lap. Safest place you could ever be. Help others. Think of others first. Put yourself second. Give back. Be humble. Be compassionate when you see someone else who needs help. Try to do the right thing and be honest. Well, Dad's probably one of the best businessmen that I've ever seen. In fact, when I graduated from law school, I actually moved back to the beach and worked for my dad at the golf course. And the training that I got there, you know, is trying to teach me how to run the books and how to look at the numbers and how to look at, you know, reports from the accounting systems so that I could understand how to manage expenses, how to manage operating costs and that sort of thing. And that was some of the best training I ever got. You know, to know the numbers of your business, to understand what they look like, is to be able to successfully manage and also to predict growth and where you need to move forward in the future. You know, he always tells this story, you know, that he was from a small farm town in Cassett, South Carolina. And he jokes sometimes, and he'll say, and he'll tell you he moved to the beach and he started a real estate company because it was a lot easier picking Yankees than it was picking cotton. So, I don't know, it's really not all that appropriate, but that's what he did, you know, and he had the guts at a time when golf courses were just sort of starting in Myrtle Beach, and he said, you know, I've got this vision, and here's what it is. Golf courses are going to be big, and real estate in Myrtle Beach is going to be big. And he was one of the first sort of pioneers to do that. And I would say that the fact that he had the guts to say, this is my goal, this is my vision, this is what I think is going to happen, you know, so it's not, it's having the skill to be able to run and manage a business, but it's also having the guts to be able to see the goal, see the big picture, and to know where to move. And that's what he was able to do. He had both the visionary side and the management side, and together that's part of what made him so successful. Every Sunday, you know, it's not a question of whether or not you're going to church. You're going to church, and if you're sleepy and you're tired, it didn't matter, you were going. And so we would go to church every Sunday, and sometimes when they had the old church, there were these pews in the back. I'm sorry about this one, really. They had these pews in the back of the church. And some of the guys that would do the ushering for the church, they would get on that back row, and they didn't think anybody could hear them. But I will tell you that they would sometimes fall asleep, and you could start to hear them snore in the church. And so I'm not sure how much of the sermon my dad got, but I'm pretty certain he would never admit to that. But yeah, so on the back row of the church, he would sometimes nod off and start to snore in church in the service. But he was pretty tired. I know that's bad. The Elliott family Christmas trips are epic, and they are legendary, and they are notorious all rolled into one. You kind of have to be a member of the family to appreciate and understand what these trips are like, or at least have, you know, married into the family or something, because nobody will believe the stuff that has happened, or what, I mean, in the things that we have gotten into. I have slept in the post office parking lot in Key West, Florida. I'm pretty certain that, we multiple times have slept in the post office parking lot in Key West, Florida, because, you know, when my family likes to sort of adventure and they like to do the sort of, what's the word, like ramble down there without any kind of reservations of any kind in the middle of peak season, high season. And so Dad doesn't want to, you know, my family's also very conservative and very frugal with money. And Dad didn't want to have to pay for these really expensive, you know, hotel rooms at night or whatever. And so we would sleep in the post office parking lot and in a van or whatever we had gotten to go down there. One year we found a floating houseboat, and there weren't enough beds for everybody. So there's this area with, what do you call that, AstroTurf carpet. And I think I slept on the AstroTurf carpet that night. I mean, there used to be so many of us that would go on these trips that we'd have one hotel room and there would be 10 to 12 people. So if you had to get up to go to the bathroom at night, you would have to step over or on multiple people. And generally speaking, you would have to close the curtain to the bathtub because almost always there was somebody sleeping in the bathtub. So it made for some really interesting situations. We always had exchange students as I was growing up. My mom always thought that having that sort of international influence was important. And so all the exchange students would load up in the car and we'd all go down to Florida every year. It was crazy and a blast. And I have so many memories from that. Going to see NASCAR or whatever, down in Daytona and all that kind of stuff. It was fun. There were many times where he was so busy and there was so much going on that we had his cell phone and I had my cell phone, and then we had the office phone at the golf course. And I would literally have one person on the phone that I was talking to and then trying at the same time to call to get the second person on the phone so that I could hand off the phone to him. So that as soon as he had gotten off the phone that was there at the golf course, it was crazy busy. We had my friends, we were going out at night to put up the signs. I went out with my dad a couple of times to put out signs. And that was really fun. I enjoyed being able to spend that day. It was close to the end of the election, and so not as much can be done, but making sure that his signs look nice because it was the last opportunity for really people to see them. And I got to go into Loris and some of the places and just ride around with my dad and talk. So that was neat. But there are other stories, like when I was a kid, he would, because, old school Tylenol, that's the kind that you can't swallow easily. You can't swallow as a kid. He would bring home this when I was sick, and he would take care of me. He would bring home those old orange circus peanuts, and he would crush up the Tylenol, and he would put them inside the circus peanuts so that it would make it easier for me to eat and do the Tylenol. So just sweet things like that, just wonderful things. What Dad, he's just a great dad. That's kind of neat. I remember that vividly. My first word wasn't Mom, it wasn't Dad. It was all Dad's fault, really, because it was one of those nights I was sitting in that leather reclining chair, and there were all those tree frogs that would stick on the window to our house, and so he would always look up and say, "There's Frog." So my first words were actually, "There's Frog," but I blame it completely on my dad. He should have known not to do that, but at any rate, I'm trying to think other things. Campaigns, all of the times that we would go to the chicken bog or the bog off over in Loris. And my favorite story was with my dad. When we were over in Loris, they used to have the tobacco auctions. It was a big deal in Loris, and I loved it. My dad took me with him, and you could hear the call of the auctioneers, and you walk into these huge old warehouses that, after years of these tobacco auctions, the whole place just fills up with that smell, and you watch them go through on those lines and turn over those leaves as they're looking for the best stock of tobacco, and my dad's trying to sort of explain to me how this process works, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. But things like that. He used to do fishing with my dad. He's a great fisher, and he was great about taking me out and showing me how to bass fish, or teaching me how to throw a cast line. He taught me all those things. One of the best things that I think my dad ever did for me, though, was when I first got in the job with Senator Hollings in Washington. I remember this. I was young. I was fresh out of college. It was that summer. I was fresh out of college. And I was like, "Dad, let's go to the Kennedy Center." So he took me up on the top of the Kennedy Center. And my mom had decided she wanted to go to a play or whatever the Kennedy Center was having. But Dad and I didn't want to go. So we went up on one of those big balconies at Kennedy Center. And, all of a sudden you're in Washington. And you think, wow, this is big time. I'm here, and I'm doing all this amazing stuff on the Hill, and, I can't believe that they give that kind of responsibility to people who are so young in Washington, but they do, because a lot of the Hill staffers are fairly young, just like I was at the time. And I remember Dad saying, look out around you, and he said, just don't lose your way here, and remember that it's the people that are around you, all these houses and apartments and places that surround us. They're the people who put you where you are, and you don't ever need to forget that. And so I think it was sort of this again, a moment where he was sort of reality checking me and saying, don't come up here with an arrogance that, you're going to know everything and you're going to tell everybody about what to do. He said, remember that you are always at your duty is to the people that, Senator Hollings represents and to the people of our state. And don't forget it. And so it was a great moment. I know he was very proud of me, but he wanted to make sure that I had my priorities right. So, and that was important. Well, my mother's very independent. She always has been. She always has her own sense of what she would like to do. And I think that that's sort of been important over the years because, Dad was in Colombia. And so I think if there's anything to take, from that relationship and that marriage, it's that, it's important to still have things that you like to do on your own outside of being married. And I think my mom did that. For sure. And of course, she's a very strong personality, so I think my dad just kind of learned that she is who she is and I'm not going to change her, and my mom kind of realized my dad's who he is and I'm not going to change him, so, and also that when you make a vow and a commitment to someone, when you say forever, it means forever. She is a social butterfly, and she can work a room better than any politician you've ever seen. She knows everybody, and if she doesn't know somebody, she's going to talk long enough to be able to meet some people, and then she's going to figure out from that group of people all the people that they know that she also knows. So she's always just been very affable and very social. So it's just part of her personality.